Welcome to the Liberating Joy in Learning podcast. I'm Robert Beckstrand, and today we're going to be discussing Bradley Staats' book, Never Stop Learning. In it, Staats helps us understand why it's important to improve how we learn. In his first chapter, Becoming a Dynamic Learner, he explains why learning is important. He says, to succeed in our new environment requires continual learning, how to do existing tasks better and how to do entirely new things. If we fail to learn, we risk becoming irrelevant. We end up solving yesterday's problems too late instead of tackling tomorrow's problems before someone else does. Next, he explains why we should improve how we learn. But we're bad at learning, supremely bad. In fact, we are our own worst enemies. Instead of doing the things that help us learn, we often do just the opposite. We are unwilling to take risks that might lead to failure. We obsess about outcomes while neglecting to examine carefully the processes through which we achieve them. We rush to answers instead of asking questions. We want to be seen doing something, anything, so we don't step back to recharge and reflect. We follow the path that others have beaten rather than forge one of our own. We look to fix irrelevant weaknesses instead of playing on to our strengths. We focus narrowly rather than draw on broad experience. We treat learning as an individual exercise and neglect the important role played by others. And he addresses all these in his book, and we'll look at a few of them in this and the following podcast. So, question is, what part of this do you most agree or disagree with?
Well, I like it all, obviously, because I picked the quote, right?
Right.
And I love his book. It's great. I just a couple of things. I think we are definitely unwilling to take risks that might lead to failure.
Right.
We don't understand processes, and so we're focused
Right.
on trying to do things rather than,
Right.
okay, how is the process going, rather than beating ourselves up for
Right.
not reaching the goals.
Right.
We focus on irrelevant weaknesses.
Right.
And let's see, I skipped one here. We follow the path that others have beaten rather than forge one of our own. We're not willing to take our own path.
Right.
We feel like we have to follow someone else's path. And obviously there's lots to learn. The last one is we neglect the important role played by others.
Right.
So other people's paths are important, but that doesn't mean we can't learn from their path and still take our own.
Right. It gets back to that we're afraid of failure, so we'll follow the path that's already been done, even if it may not be the most efficient. We know it works, but it may not work exactly for us because everybody's different. Everybody learns differently, or everybody achieves a goal differently.
Right, and maybe they're solving a problem that doesn't need to be solved anymore. So then we do have to create new paths for ourselves.
Right.
So.
And the one that stood out to me was we rush to answers instead of asking questions. Instead of saying, okay, wait, why are we doing this? We do it. Even though it may not be exactly right, we're like, well, this is the answer. Well, it may be an answer, but it may be to the wrong question.
Yeah.
And so we don't stop to ask, what's the big idea? Mm-hmm. We don't ask that question often enough. This is a great example of the following quote a few pages later. Since failure is to some degree a surprise, it makes us change our assumptions. So how does this view of how bad we are at learning help us change our assumptions about our ability to learn?
Okay, so I wrote down that it helps us re-examine how much better we could be.
Right.
I think when we don't realize there are weaknesses with learning, then we miss out on all the great things we could be learning.
Right.
So.
Yeah, I think I think to a certain degree and I'm saying this as a generalization, don't realize how bad we are at learning.
Right.
And that we could be better. That we get complacent, we get blinders on, and we're just following a path instead of looking up and looking around and seeing, oh, well, what could this direction take me, or where could this direction take me, and being willing to step off that beaten path and learn something new.
Right. Right. So when we think we know how to learn, then we quit looking to understand it better. When comparing Learning Liberated with other books about learning, Staats' book is the one most like Learning Liberated.
Right.
Something I touch on in my book, but we haven't touched on a whole lot in this podcast, is the difference between setting goals and setting up learning processes. Mm-hmm. According to James Clear, goals in general reduce your happiness, are strangely at odds with long-term progress, and suggest that you can control things that you have no control over. And I totally agree with that, right? That we set these goals assuming we can reach them, right? The solution instead is to commit to processes to release the need for immediate results and to build feedback loops in order to evaluate those processes.
Right.
Instead, Learning Liberated helps a person to gain the perspective they need to create processes for reaching our goals. In Staats' chapter entitled Learning Requires Process Focus, Not Outcome Focus, he says, when you take time to learn the process, you recognize that it often involves more inputs than you first imagined.
Right.
So as learners focus on the process, they can see through the noise that surrounds the valuable signal. And also focusing on the output rather than the process shrouds the details, and your model of the process will be incomplete. So if we're just looking to do stuff, then we miss out on the value of how we do stuff.
Right.
Like there's so much value in just understanding how.
Right.
So how does trying to do stuff with our goals prevent us from learning?
Well, I think I agree with what he says is if we become outcome focused instead of process focused, we set an outcome that is probably entirely based on what our understanding is right now, completely unachievable.
Yeah, it's more likely to be unachievable.
Right, and it's more likely to be unachievable. If we combine the process with the goal, if we have a goal, getting back to our goal, the example we've used multiple times in this podcast about learning to play disc golf. If we were just focusing on, I want to throw 400 feet, and I'm just going out and start throwing until I can throw 400 feet, you're never going to get there.
Yeah.
You have to understand the process. Okay, what do I need to do? I need to get the steps down. I need to get the way to hold the disc down. I have to get my arm at the right angle. There's a whole process involved, and if we marry the process with the goal, and it's okay to set goals, but when you do it, you got to set the process how you're going to get there, and make sure that the process you're going to follow will eventually take you to your goal.
Right.
And I think that's where we fail a lot of times, is we just focus on the goal and not the process to get us to that goal.
Right. We just think that self-discipline will just carry us through.
Right.
We just have enough self-discipline, we can reach all of the goals we want, and that's a very limited view. Clearly self-discipline plays a role in learning, but it's like playing with one or two keys on a piano.
Right.
So
you can only do so much.
Right. Okay, so doing stuff may appear to be an easier way to get the results we seek. However, a process focus helps build discipline in your learning objectives, even when you encounter numerous other demands on your time. John Steinbeck said, in writing, habit seems to be a much stronger force than either willpower or inspiration. An important aspect of learning liberated principles is reducing our reliance on self-discipline in our learning. Furthermore, by focusing on doing stuff, we miss out on time to find more joy in learning by freely experimenting, exploring, and discovering. So how do processes reduce our reliance on self-discipline to help us learn if life is crazy, at any point, right? In any situation?
Well, and I think we've been discussing it in this today, that by not focusing on a process, but by working out a process to achieve your goal. And the thing I think that's important is the process may not get you to your goal. But if you set a process, you go through the process and realize, okay, that didn't take me quite where I wanted to be. What I need to do to the process to get to my goal. And that's where the tweaking comes. And that by doing the process, you don't have to worry about self-discipline. You set a series of steps to get there. If it doesn't take you there, you look, okay, what was it that I missed? Oh, I need to add this here, or I need to change this here. And that helps you progress towards your ultimate goal. And without that process, and you're relying, well, I can do it just because I want to do it. I set a goal, I'm going to do it. Life happens. You have to go fix a child's car that has a flat, or somebody can't get in their house because they locked themselves out with the key and the power's out. They can't get in because their garage door isn't opening. There's all these things that pop up that get in the way of self-discipline. But if you have the process down, it's okay when life will jump in because you have that process you can fall back on and still achieve your goal.
Right. So no matter what life throws at you, you have something you can do.
Right.
That, it may not feel like you're directly going at it, but you're heading that way. Sort of like, and I know nothing about sailing, but I know that sometimes you have to zigzag quite a ways to go the direction that you want to go. And that's when you set up a process, you create a system that does that for you.
Right.
So, all right, thanks for joining us in this first part of our discussion of Bradley Staats' book, Never Stop Learning. Next time, we'll finish our discussion of some of Staats' ideas from this book. And as always, if you have questions or comments, message us at learningliberated@gmail.com or on our Learning Liberated Facebook group with any questions or comments. And if this episode spoke to you, share it with someone else that might enjoy it as well.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.